So good morning, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Cosán's Community Partner webinar on Digital Equity Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. This webinar marks the launch of Get Yourself Online Digital Inclusion Week, which runs from today, Monday the 25th to Friday the 29th of April. Led by Cosán, this is Ireland's first community-based digital inclusion week, which aims to bring awareness to this important issue, that almost 1 in 2 adults in Ireland lack basic digital skills. And this campaign, in collaboration with all of you here, aims to boost adult learners' digital skills and their confidence. We're so delighted to have almost 130 attendees at final check-in there this morning who have registered for today's event, and I know some will be joining a little bit later. And we have attendees coming from all across Ireland with guests from the UK, Canada and Finland, so it's quite an international element to the event today. It just shows the interest that there is in this topic. My name is Maria Flanagan, to those who don't know me, Community Partner Lead in Cosán, and I'm delighted to be your MC today. So before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping points to run through. This webinar has been recorded, as you'll see, and it will be available to you afterwards. We will share the recording on YouTube after the event and circulate it to everybody who had registered for the event. Your cameras can be on or off, but for sound quality, we do ask if you can please keep your mics on mute. We will have some time for questions and answers before the breaks at 10:45 and again later before we finish at 11:45, time permitting. I'd ask that you submit your questions into the chat box during the event, and we will come to your questions at those times, and we'll Mark and Marina will bring our attention to those questions. I'd like to introduce you to Emer McNally, who's our graphic harvester for the event today. Emer will be graphically recording today's event using live visuals that will tell the story of our event, capturing some of the insightful quotes that come through in the speeches and communicating the key points in a very creative and visual way as they happen. We will also share these graphics with you after the event. We'd like to take a group photograph before the break, which we'll use on social media. So if you'd prefer not to be included, please just feel free to turn your camera off and we'll make sure not to include you in that post. For creating awareness for the event, we have some social media hashtags, if we might just move on to the next slide. And this is really important, I suppose, to raise awareness around the importance of adult digital skills and building their confidence, and to get the awareness around the Get Yourself Online Digital Inclusion Week out there to those who haven't heard about today. We at Cosán would be really grateful if you could support us to spread awareness of this national campaign and share details on your social media. So on the next slide, we have some hashtags, some handles and suggested tweets, which are posted here on the screen, and the team will post these, I think, into the chat box for you, so you can easily share on your social media platforms during and after the event. So please, those of you who are good on Twitter, please start spreading the word. We'd like to get trending if possible. So the next slide. Thank you. So in keeping with the ethos of Cosán, and before we actually start the webinar, we'd like to share with you an opening circle. Those of you who have been to Cosán for meetings or courses may have witnessed this already. So I'd like you to take a moment to relax and to be present. Maybe even close your eyes. Our opening circle today, we share the words of Nigerian Irish poet Felisa Usana, who goes by her stage name of Feli Speaks, and I hope I can do her justice. These women come into conversations like fireworks, blowing up your comfort with wonders in minds have divulged and dissected, brightening up your imagination with thoughts you never knew could turn you over in beaming smiles. These dreaming women are infecting you with their genius and their wondering, never accepting that life at first glance is exactly the way it should be. They are intelligent, they are beautiful, and they are wild. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our first speaker, Heydi Foster, CEO of Cosán. Heydi has extensive senior leadership experience in education, human rights, community development, and delivery of social services in marginalized and vulnerable communities in Ireland, USA, Guatemala, and Africa. She's also a commissioner with the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission. She has previously been CEO at the International Development Agency, Mission Cara. And I'm delighted to pass over to Heydi now.
Thank you, Maria. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. It is an absolute pleasure to have you with us for our second community partner webinar. Last year's virtual event, Leaving No One Behind, was a great success with over 70 organizations joining us for our webinar. At that session, we heard about the National Strategy, Adult Literacy for Life. I was a member of the Technical Advisory Committee developing the strategy and delighted to speak at its official launch in September on behalf of our community sector. Adult Literacy for Life is an important 10-year government-led strategy that seeks to create a connected system in Ireland in which no one is left behind. This is a vitally important issue for us in Cosán, as for almost 40 years now, we have provided a pathway for women out of intergenerational disadvantage. We have established an inclusive and welcoming environment that encourages women to take the first or next step along a pathway out of poverty and disadvantage. We do this through the provision of learner-centered adult community education, early years education and care, family counseling, and our evolving and responsive wraparound supports. Cosán's focus is the empowerment of women through education. We are and always will be feminist in our values while being inclusive in our approach. The women we work with require and deserve the best contemporary learner-centered wraparound supports that we can provide. We believe this is critical to eradicating intergenerational poverty today and in the future. And it's also critical to our core objective of leaving no one behind. We've always been responsive to the needs of our community and wider network. We identify technology as a means to extend our learning pathways to women and communities across Ireland. Often, these are women who have been let down by mainstream types of education. We became pioneers of online and blended learning in Ireland. We could see how embracing educational technology would allow us to extend our reach and our impact. It would allow us to provide more educational options for those furthest behind. The theme of this year's International Women's Day was Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. The UN chose this because of the pivotal role women play in fighting for a sustainable future. For many of our learners, their education is their hope. Education is their chance to build a sustainable and equitable future for themselves and their children, a chance to change their opportunities and build their futures. But when it comes to digital inclusion, equality isn't necessarily the answer. As the American James Baldwin once put it, anyone who has ever struggled with poverty knows how extremely expensive it is to be poor. The goal of digital equity recognizes all individuals and communities have different circumstances. We must allocate the requisite digital skills and information technology resources needed if we are to reach an equal outcome. This approach is necessary for a full participation in our society, democracy, and economy. These skills and resources enable civic and cultural participation, employment, lifelong learning, and access to essential services. They're critical to ensure that no one and no community is left behind. There are many women and families who are excluded from the basic technological necessities and digital opportunities many of us take for granted. During COVID, it felt like we were all moved online, but the digital divide was a barrier for very many people in doing so. We're committed to tackling the digital divide in Ireland. We know we have to improve Ireland's basic levels of digital literacy as a matter of urgency. Research shows that almost half of Ireland's adult population lack basic digital skills. Meanwhile, 9 out of 10 jobs in the immediate future will require or involve having digital skills. The government and the EU's ambition to see 80% of adults with digital skills by 2030. But a substantial digital divide also persists between women and men in terms of internet access and use. In 2019, the proportion of women using the internet globally was 48%, compared to 58% of men. When women have access to the internet and the skills to use technology, they have the opportunity to access education, start new businesses, find better paid jobs, and access health and financial services. If we are to ensure that our society is truly equal, women must be empowered, encouraged, and supported to embrace the benefits of technology. They must be given the tools to engage fully as digital citizens. It will help them lift themselves, their families, and their communities out of poverty. So addressing the intersectionality aspect of Ireland's digital divide is critical. To support digital inclusion at the grassroots level across Ireland, we believe a missing piece is the connection between access to technology and digital skills support for left behind learners at community level. And this, friends, is what Cosán's Get Yourself Online campaign and creating our network of local digital champions is all about. Thank you for joining us in this campaign. Because of your efforts, the conversation has commenced in communities across Ireland, on social media, on local radio, and local newspapers. We will work with you to provide digital learning support to all those who need it. With your support and involvement, we are creating a model for a connected system to work in an inclusive way with our marginalized and remote communities to ensure we are leaving no one behind. Don't doubt that we can do this together. The pandemic has taught us that we can never again doubt that we are tough enough to take on the biggest and most intractable problems. We can all now see that if we work collectively and with purpose, we can triumph. If we truly value fairness and pool our efforts, we are formidable. But we must ensure we continue to strive to reach those furthest behind first and start the process of building their confidence around digital competence. Through acting together, we can ensure a brighter and a sustainable future. We must continue together to strive for at least 80% digital inclusion by 2030. In one generation, this change will spread out to equip women, families, and communities with the skills, knowledge, and empowerment they need to escape poverty forever. This is our one generation solution in Cosán. Together we can and we will succeed. Finally, I want to thank Simon Harris, Minister for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, for his support and taking time to address our webinar. Paul Finnis, CEO, the UK's Digital Poverty Alliance and the Learning Foundation, for his insights into the digital divide in the UK and sharing his experiences in tackling this issue. Katie Maguire from our partner and supporter Accenture, who will deliver insights from research conducted recently into digital skills in Ireland and Accenture's new digital index. Jemma from Léargas, IPALE, the European Adult Education Platform, who are also supporting this event, for telling us about the work IPALE are doing. And most importantly, the Cosán learners, Samantha Dowdall, Paula Ryan, Tanya Shields, Selena McLean, and Pamela Doran, who are contributing their perspectives and experiences during today's event. Thank you to everyone on the Cosán team who helped bring this event and campaign together. I want to give a special thanks to Mark Kelly for his relentless commitment and passion to digital inclusion and supporting the furthest left behind. And again, to you all for coming today. I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Over to you, Maria, and thank you very much for doing this, Maria.
Thank you, Heydi, for those insights and for setting the backdrop for us today. Really, really useful. I'm now delighted to share with you a pre-recorded message from the Minister for Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, Minister Simon Harris. We're very grateful for him for taking the time to support our Digital Inclusion Week.
Okay, one moment, Maria. Just let me know if everyone can hear the video.
Thank you, Dragana.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity to address this important event, the launch of our country's first ever Digital Inclusion Week. And I'd like to thank Heydi Foster and her colleagues at Cosán for hosting this webinar. The theme of this webinar, Digital Inclusion, could not have come at a better time, Over the past 2 years, we've seen our lives disrupted and somewhat forever changed due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the acceleration of digital change. One of the biggest changes in our daily lives has definitely been the frequency with which we now use digital technologies in every aspect of our lives, and we now have opportunities to learn, to connect, and to work like never before. The pandemic has definitely accelerated that transition to a digital society, faster than perhaps anyone ever could have imagined. However, as we emerge from the pandemic, or at least the health emergency part, as an increasingly digitalised society, it's important to be aware that not everyone has the same level of digital access or digital skills. And if we don't address this, we run a very serious risk of blocking people out of full economic and societal and educational participation. I know Accenture will today present their report called Towards a Digital Society and their new Digital Index Barometer, which will track Ireland's progress in closing the digital divide. I really welcome this. Accenture's report reveals some very interesting findings, such as the sense of apathy towards training and improvement, and the fact that significant cohorts in our society continue to be excluded from key services which are now increasingly offered online. We appreciate these valuable real-time insights from industry. A key tenet for my own department as we respond to our shared challenge is to ensure that we have the appropriate skills to continue to develop as an economy and as a society, and that there's a partnership between education and enterprise. So in short, we've made a lot of progress together. We've made progress when we've collaborated, when we've partnered, when we have worked together and not worked in silos. We've seen that in terms of how we've dealt with the COVID pandemic. We see it in terms of our new literacy strategy. We now have funding in place to develop and progress that strategy, to take real concrete steps. And my message to you today is, as we roll out our literacy strategy, as we publish our new National Access Plan, as we put more resources into these areas, we want to work together. We want to work across society. We want to work with government. We want to work with NGOs. We want to work with community educators. We want to work with industry. We want to work with everybody who shares our view and our vision that nobody in this country should be left behind. Nobody in this country should be excluded or blocked out from reaching their full potential based on their circumstances. I know when we work together, we're going to achieve this. I know events like this webinar and weeks like this Digital Inclusion Week are key to sparking conversations, building connections, and taking the next steps. I wish you the very best for the rest of your webinar. Gurmila Wagaf.
Excellent. I think it's fantastic to have the Minister's support of this event today and for the week, and hopefully well into the future. So moving on to our next stage, interspersed between our speakers today, we have inserted some short videos from our Cosán learners who will be talking about their own personal experience and their digital development journeys in education. Our first learner story is from Samantha Dowdall.
I'm just gonna, can I just Maria, can I just reshare again the content just to check if the sound is okay with everyone?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. 1 second, everyone.
I think if people can turn up their volume as well, because I can hear perfect.
Okay, brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start again and we're going to hear now the first learner story. So please guys tell me if you cannot hear well and I will fix the issue.
The personal and professional development course has helped me as well with my digital skills, as I didn't know how to use Microsoft, or I didn't know how to structure an essay or how to write an essay, and I think that really helped me. You know, I was never a person for, you know, to be doing computers and sitting there on a computer. I actually didn't know how to send an email at one stage, whereas I've learned that now. So I've learned a lot, so I'm very grateful for Cosán for giving me that opportunity. I think my daughter watching me on the computer and she just say, "Mommy, what are you doing? Are you doing college work today?" And I'm like, "Yes, just give me 5 minutes." And I do include her, so I bring her over and I do include her. And I try to explain little bits here and there, you know, about what I'm doing, and try to tell her, like, this is Mammy's computer and I have to write an essay, and I tell her what an essay is, even though she doesn't know half the times. But it's still encouraging her and it's showing her, it's bringing her into what I'm doing. So that, I think, is empowering herself to learn her and let her say that I can do it at this stage, and I'm doing it at this stage, and I'm doing it for us. And she keeps saying, "Mommy, you're going back to college because you can have a better job and get us money." So I think that's quite, I think for her it's quite empowering to see me as a mother go back to education.
Excellent. It's fantastic to hear the stories of our learners. They're always at the heart of everything we do. So our next section, I'm very pleased and delighted to be able to introduce you to Paul Finnis, who is CEO of the Digital Poverty Alliance UK and also CEO of the Learning Foundation UK. So we're very grateful for Paul for joining us here today and for taking time out to share his insights. He's going to share insights from his extensive work in tackling digital poverty and how collaborating is key to successfully bridging the digital divide. Paul,
thank you.
Welcome to us today. Paul, you're...
Hi. Thank you so much, Maria. And I just love that, the open circle at the beginning. Whenever I leave my little room here, my wife, who's a yoga teacher, just reminds me to breathe. And we don't take enough time to do that sometimes. So anyway, I'm really genuinely super happy to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me. When Mark originally contacted me, we talked about taking just 10 or 15 minutes to talk about the work of the Digital Poverty Alliance and the situation in the UK. And I originally thought that sounded fine, but then, as most of you in the webinar will know, that 10 or 15 minutes to talk about the topic is really nothing like enough. But so what I'll try to do today is to just give you some insights and things, but hope, and I'll say right at the very beginning that my hope absolutely very much is that this is a path that we can walk on together, and we absolutely pledge to stand side by side with you as you go forward with this really important initiative and work that you're doing. So in many ways, actually, I've also just to say, in many ways, I think you're already a leap ahead of us. I mean, listening to Simon Harris talking there, you know, I'm aware that the Realtas Naharan, if that's the right way to pronounce it, is you know, fully behind the work that's going on in Ireland at the moment. And I can start very early by saying that that is absolutely not the case in other parts, not other parts, in the UK, beg your pardon. So in Scotland, for instance, they have a digital strategy which recognises that digital literacy is on a par with numeracy and literacy. In Wales, they're doing some fantastic work in hand with the government there, but very much in England and in Northern Ireland at the moment, there is much less activity. So as a result, we're finding our way forward in a structure which means that we're all working together as much as possible, but yet without that really crucial element of having government clearly behind us. I also note the research work that you've done with Accenture. I'm sorry I won't be able to stay longer today, but I do look forward to reading that in more depth, and others, about the degree to which, plus or minus, the picture in Ireland is more or less the same as other countries that we know of, and certainly in the UK. And the primary reason still for people being disconnected from the digital world being primarily around poverty, financial poverty, that is. Sorry, this slide's a bit wordy, but one of the things I'll also say is that when I put the slides together, I thought they might be useful for reference later on and things. So please, I'm not going to read all the words to you on the slides and things, but I'll try and pick out some bits and pieces that might be useful. My core role, as I say, is at the Learning Foundation, which, like Cosán, has a 20-year history. Cosán longer, I think, working around digital, well, not digital particularly, but working in education. We support schools to engage effectively with digital in the way they deliver learning and manage their school system things. And we've been doing that, as I say, for about 20 years. But one of the things that we kept coming across when we were working with our schools, talking to the schools that we were working with, was these very large numbers of school children who were disconnected completely at home. And we felt that something more clearly needed to be done on that. One of the mantras that when I joined the Learning Foundation in 2015, one of the mantras I learned was, it's not the device, it's about what the device does. And of course, I know there's nobody around in this webinar today that would disagree with that. And of course, I don't either, it is. But I can increasingly ask myself the question, which is, but if you haven't got a device or connectivity or the skills to use something, if you're lucky enough to have them, then you know, you're not really even on that path. And that path has changed so much in the last 20 years, hasn't it? Where it was a kind of nice to have so long time ago. But now, absolutely, if you want to participate, again, as Simon Harris said, economically, even democratically nowadays, you need to be online. So the situation has changed enormously. So more needed to be done. What we launched then in those days was something called the digital access for all, and I hope, truth to say, in 2017-18, when we launched that, there was very little real understanding about the depth and the nature of the issue of people being disconnected. And of course, as Simon and Heydi referred to, of course, the pandemic changed all of that fairly dramatically. What then happened, and I'm sure the case is true in Ireland too, what then happened was that everybody came at it from a whole variety of different angles to try and solve the problems that they were finding either nationally or in their local communities. And all of that activity was really well-meaning, but, and it's a very big but, and not a lot of it, or not all of it certainly, was really fully thought through. And certainly not having the kind of impact on people's lives and the support that we want to provide to people that that all of us would be looking for. And I have to say, this is true whether it was national government responses or, you know, an individual providing a device perhaps for their local school. And I'll give you two quick examples. One is the DfE in England, in UK, they provided, as you probably know, 1.5 million devices or thereabouts, but with no connectivity and no support and no sense of sustainability. So what happens when those devices need renewing in a few years' time and things? So clearly a bit of the jigsaw puzzle filled in, but not all of it. And then another example, for instance, was a company that we now work with that gave 10,000 devices in 2020, but they know 2 years later on that still half of those devices have never been switched on. So there is, for me, also something around this link between effort and motivation and drive and all of those kind of things, and the reality of change on the ground that we want to see. And so it isn't a simple case. So as a result, we decided to launch Digital Poverty Alliance using two of the very key words that the webinar today is also picking up, which is equity and sustainability. Absolutely equity and actually absolutely sustainability. As I say to others, you know, even if every single school-age child had a device right now and they don't, what happens in September when another 500,000 or whatever it is might be children and young people arrive at school or move up a grade? So we did ours instead with a great donation from Currys and a real commitment to help us to drive that forward, and also with a 150-year-old organization called the Institution of Engineering and Technology, which gives you some of that kind of weight as well as the kind of agility and things that you need. So as I say, I won't go through all the slides. We've been in existence about a year, but actually our core team really only for 3 or 4 months. But we have built up a number of assets, which absolutely we'd be super happy to make available to Cosán, whatever's needed. And you know, we'll work on with Heydi and Maria and Mark and others in the team to see what we've got that might be useful. A couple of values that are important to us. One is own little and inspire much, and aggregate, never duplicate. Now, the thinking behind those two, by the way, was simply that we think, more or less, that all of the constituent parts to resolve this problem, as Heydi said, are there if we just pull together and work it on together. However, it is all a bit all over the shop and things. And what needs to be done is to kind of draw it together. So the last thing I wanted to do was set up another monolithic organization with all of these elements to it, but instead rely on what we instead have built, which is a fantastic network of partners through whom we can work to get the access to the scale and information and everything else that we need. A couple of headline things which I went through recently, but again, I won't go into detail, but just to refer to them. A couple of things. One is you're not alone, because every country in the world currently is kind of at some point in this. The definitions are super important, depending on how you define it. As you know, if you've got no access at all, for instance, if you define it as no access at all, then you might be talking about a number of households. If you're talking about, again, as Heydi referred to, numbers of people with without skills, maybe having access but no skills, then you're talking about a much more significant number. So you're going to have to prioritize, and prioritization is really important. Research, I can't underestimate that. You're very lucky to have Accenture on your side. Very jealous about that. Accenture, if you want to come and help us in the UK, that'd be brilliant. In the UK as well, that'd be brilliant. It is complex, as you all know, and there are some resources, quite a lot of resources around, which again, we'll make available what we've got. So could it go on to the next slide, and I'll try and finish up as much as possible. So it's kind of, people ask us what the DPA is, and it's kind of difficult to describe actually. So one of the best descriptions I've heard so far is about us being like an airport. So we're not responsible for all the aeroplanes and all of that kind of stuff, but what we try to do is to bring all the elements together, whether you're a passenger or an airline, to try and make sure that the right pieces are in the right place at the right time. So it's more like a sort of air traffic control. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but that was the way of us trying to describe what we're trying to do. We're not trying to replace anything. We're trying to build on the best that's available and make sure all those parts come together in a way that ensures that people move on. So next slide. This is the reality of poverty, digital poverty in the UK. Something like 40% of children and young people not having the access that they need. But one slide, and again, do refer back to the slide later if that's useful, but one of the bits of information on this slide that's interesting to me is that 2.5 million people are in UK at the moment behind on their broadband bills, and 700,000 or 800,000 of them are already in the red. And the thing for me about that is that, as we know, all household budgets are going to be affected dramatically in the next, I've already started to be, dramatically in the next 12 months or so. Our worry is actually the numbers of people who are disconnected is going to get worse, not better in the short term. And so there is an urgency to this problem, which I'm sure that I know full well that we all share. So yeah, next slide. Let me try and finish off now. Just to say, this is our vision. I love the fact that you picked up. You also selected 2030. Feels like a milestone, doesn't it? To end digital poverty once and for all. It's a big task, and I'm not saying we're definitely going to achieve it, but I absolutely believe that's what we're aiming for, and I know you do too. And then what we're doing, we're just about finishing our listening, learning, and building. We're now going to be producing our UK evidence review, which again, I'm very happy to share with you. That will be towards the end of June, and that will go on to inform a national delivery plan. We got very fed up, as I'm sure you did too, with the idea that lots of reports going into various different government departments calling on government to do this, that, and the other, but actually then listing recommendations, but then not carrying those forward. From our point of view, there are things that corporates can do, things that the NGOs can do, things that individuals can do, because we think a lot of the change is going to be happening at a very community level, and government has a really important role to play in that, but there's no point in just writing government's got no money and things at the moment. And then again, which I love about what you're doing, we're working with people right now, is doing what we can for those people who are really struggling right now. So next slide. This is our definition. It is important how you define digital poverty. So just to say that this is our definition. We are trying, for instance, with research companies to share visions, to share definitions, by the way, because otherwise, if the definitions are not similar or identical, then unfortunately the figures often from one research company could look very conflicting with another, whether one's talking about households and one talking about individuals, one talking about digital poverty being around just skills, for instance, and others talking about digital poverty being about not having the device and connectivity. So these two things can often be at loggerheads with each other. And as I say, we found research is super important in this space. So next slide. I'm rushing forward a little bit. This is what we look like. We're a charity, so the governance sits with our foundation board. We have a founders board. We have a community board, which I'd love to talk to you more about later, another time perhaps, which is where what we have is aggregators. So around that community board are people representing housing, UK finance, health, education, a whole variety of things, but nobody there with any vested commercial interests. These are all organizations who are there representing larger numbers of organizations to input, and then ultimately to take information out of the DPA and take it to its communities. British Retail Consortium is a great example. They have 3 million employees in retail, many of whom do fall into the category of vulnerable families or who are disconnected. And so once they've able to get the information they want, they they can translate into activity through their partners to support the people that they need to. And then just again, I love these little vignettes you put together, the people with lived experience. Unless we actually talk to people who are struggling, then we don't really understand what it is that we need to be providing to help them to move forward. So people with lived experience are really important. So next slide. This is our determinants of digital poverty, which I touched on earlier on. Just it's much more complex than just device and connectivity. You'll have your own version of this, but please, if there's anything you want to nick or borrow or use or whatever from this, then please do. Next, this is based on the health determinants of digital poverty, the health determinants, which actually tries to isolate what the reason is that an individual was ill in the first place, rather than continuing to deal with the results of that problem. So yeah, sorry, next slide. I've touched on these before, but you know, this is a long conversation with Maria and Avril and Hayley and Mark later on. Yep, next. We have got a community hub, and just to say that you're welcome to come and join it, please do. Think of it as a sort of Facebook for the digital community. One of the things we'd be very happy to do would be to set up, for instance, an Cosán room where you could all come and share ideas and everything else. It's like like Facebook, so you can have discussions, you can hold meetings and do a variety of other bits and pieces. It also acts as a hub for research, for instance, so all of the latest research to do with digital poverty in the UK and elsewhere, actually, it's not just in the UK, is on that hub, as well as other information and things. So please do go and visit that if you get a chance to. Next slide. And I'll just finish off these last couple of slides, really just, there's some more information about the numbers in the UK. Next. And this is why we've built our movement in the way that we have. Again, I add it into this in case there's anything useful for Cosán and participating community partners to use, but I won't go through it now. You're pleased to know. So that brings me to the end. I just wish you every success, and as I say, I'm very, very happy to stand hand in hand with you as you take this forward. And really sorry I can't stay for longer today, but I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was really, and we'd love to have given you more time. And we could be here all day, really, couldn't we? So much information in there. But you know what? We'll share all of your slides with our attendees today, so they'll be able to go into the detail of what you shared. It's really great to hear about the work you're doing in the UK. So thank you and your colleagues who joined us today, so that we can learn more about your work and we can learn from one another. I really look forward to collaborating with you in the future on this global challenge.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maria.
And I'm really excited to hear more about that digital community hub. I think that's something really exciting, and something that would add great value to our network here in Ireland. We have over 200 community partners across the country, so something like that would be fantastic.
Yeah, perfect.
It's really all about connecting. Thank you so much. So moving on to our next section, as many of you will know already, Cosán have been delivering our innovative model of blended and online courses since we piloted our programs back in 2014. And as Heydi has already mentioned, we've been actively involved in addressing the digital skills gap and highlighting the importance of digital inclusion for many, many years. Our next video will bring us to our Deputy CEO, Anne Ginocchi. And Anne will talk about the global pandemic and how it affected many of our learners in their transition to online learning and their ability to remain connected to education during lockdown.
We've always had online learning. We've had programs online for a number of years now, and we've been working to tackle the digital divide, you know, to include people to access online learning all over the country. But in Cosán itself, all our programs were face-to-face in the main building. And when COVID hit, we made laptops available to people, but that wasn't all they needed. You know, we realised that a lot of people had very poor digital skills. With the supports that we were able to provide, we did have a lot of learners that were able to continue with us and engage in their programs every week. The pandemic just made it so obvious to us that there's a lot of people that can engage easily, but there's certainly a lot of people that can't, and it's It's like the literacy barrier from years ago, people that couldn't read and write and kept that hidden. That's the way the digital literacy is now, that everything is around digital, booking a holiday or, anything implying for cards from the government. You need these skills for everyday living, as well as if you want to further your education and training or go on in employment.
In order to enhance, improve and develop the online learning experience for our learners and the learners of our community partners, a range of supports have been developed for both tutors, community educators and our learners. This includes a tailored CPD module in technology enhanced learning, which we developed this year and which has currently been rolled out to 50 community educators across the country. Our digital inclusion unit and our assistive technology tools, which are all supports available to our community. In the next video, we will hear from our colleagues in Cosán, Dragana Soro, education technologist, Aisling Johnston, digital skills trainer, and Brendan McGuigan, assistive technology trainer, who will talk about the digital resources and supports available to our community in Cosán.
Technology Enhanced Learning course is offered to many practitioners, some of them coming from community development background or community education background, but we mostly offer to our community partners. And there's three integral elements to this course. One is teaching them about theories and strategies in teaching and learning, specifically for blended and online learning. Second is digital tools that they can use to mitigate the learning process in online and blended learning environment. And the third critical element is to understand digital skills of the learners and how they can meet their needs in their practice and education.
Each technology enhanced learning course is slightly different than the last one because we're co-creating. It's a collaboration between Cosán and the community partners. So it's about inclusive learning, and it's tailored to each individual. So we try as far as possible to meet the organisation's individual needs. So we'll be constantly asking for feedback, and we want them to be active participants within that course.
Part of Cosán ethos and wraparound services for all learners, we have established digital inclusion units. The role of the units is to provide access to hardware, digital skills, competences, and confidence for all learners that step in and engage with Cosán educational programs. The role of educational moderators is to provide support to tutors and to learners in class, but most importantly to assist them throughout troubleshooting technology issues which boost overall confidence of learners in their digital skills. Another element of digital inclusion unit is that we provide laptop loan scheme. That means that each learner can avail device, mouse, or any necessary hardware to participate actively in Cosán online or blended learning programs, or if that's face-to-face in the classroom programs also.
Assistive technology is any software program or hardware device that would help an individual perform a task that might otherwise be quite difficult for them. At Cosán, we're using the term assistive technology, but we feel that it's more accessible technology that would help an individual to access content and articulate their content easier. The objectives of the assistive technology, I'd say, are twofold. So it's almost a yin-yang situation where it's to increase time management and decrease stress levels. These tools will then transcend and impact various aspects of an individual's life, whether it be educational, professional, or personal.
thank you to the team for sharing their work and supports that are available to our community. And some of you will already have experienced some of those supports if you've done a course with us in the past. I just want to bring a reminder to you just to drop any questions you might have into the chat so that we can come to them at the break, just before we go to break. So our next section we're moving on to, and our next learner story. And here we hear from Tanya, who's going to give us an idea of how these digital and one-to-one supports provided by Cosán have helped her on her learning journey.
During the pandemic, we were halfway through our special needs assistant course when we had to take the classes online. Like I said, there was a few, there was diverse ages and people in different stages. So Ash and Jordana, who would work more closely with the kind of IT part, they had set up 2 classes dedicated to showing us how to work Google Classroom, which was what we were using at the time, and how to navigate our ways through, how we could find information. Being able to do that for me was a lifesaver, because I reckon if the pandemic hit and we hadn't got the option of going online, I don't think I would have had that drive to do it all by myself, because like I said, I was out of school for a long time and coming back as a mature student and stuff like that. So I didn't have them skills that maybe others had. So having that was a lifeline for me, because I needed that support.
So we're now going to go and have a few short Q&A, some questions. If anybody has any questions that you have that have arisen for you from hearing what you've heard this morning. Mark and Marina, do we have any questions for our panel at this point?
Nothing's come through the chat.
Nothing comes through yet.
So
okay.
Everyone seems happy.
Excellent. Okay, well, if anybody has any questions, please do pop them in the chat and Mark and Marina can bring them to us. Maybe we'll just, whilst you're thinking about those, we'll just maybe do a spotlight on our graphic harvester. So Avra, would you like to pin Emer McNally, our graphic harvester, who has been busy capturing the visuals of today? So Emer communicates the key points in a creative and visual way that tell the story of our event. So we look forward to sharing with these after the event. So as you can see, she's busy building the design of the event and each of the speakers. It's a really fantastic way of mind mapping, I think, all of the speakers and the thoughts and the key insights from our event, and a really nice way of remembering, looking back on it, and maybe sharing with your learning community as well. So navigating the online space. Excellent. So that's just a small little taster for what you're going to see at the very end, and we'll come back to Emer at the end. So have we any questions since Mark? Had anything popped into?
No, nothing as yet. So I think everyone seems happy enough.
Excellent. Okay, so we can we'll move on to the group photograph if that's okay with everyone. Oops, I think I see something coming in there now. So Dahi has asking about artificial intelligence. Personalized tutors are proving to be so effective in empowering individuals at risk with literacy. Is there any move to go there? So artificial intelligence, personalized tutors are proving to be so effective in empowering individuals at risk with literacy. Is there any move to go there? Does anybody want to take that? No takers, perhaps.
No, I don't think artificial intelligence is exactly where we're at the moment. So, but we are always keeping our eye out on it. And you know, we're open to innovation. That's you know, as Heydi said, we were pioneers in terms of online and blended. We were ready for the pandemic before the pandemic, you know, it was even, could even be considered, you know, so we're always watching this space.
Excellent. So maybe we can talk to Dahi about that afterwards. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention, Dahi.
Sorry, Maria, can I just add, we do use technology tools to personalize learning within the classroom or in online and blended learning environments, but not on the level of AI, as Mark mentioned.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, Triana. So
sorry, I just have a question in the chat box as well from a community member. It's Gail from North Wall CDP, and she's asking, is there an option to give a learner group a digital prep before starting a level 5 or 6 course, please?
could you repeat that again, Avril?
Yeah, no problem. Is there an option to give a learner group a digital prep before starting a level 5 or level 6 course, please?
So actually, what we do have is a return to learning course, which just started it's starting on the 27th, I believe, this week on Thursday. And I do believe it's full at the moment, but if anybody's interested to get in touch with us, and we can provide more information about maybe the next course that's coming up. And that is a course that is a precursor course for moving on for a learner who might want to decide what they're trying to do at level 5 further education level, and it gives them the tools like personal development and computer skills to be able to do so. So great question.
Can I just jump in there? Hi, Gail. Glad to see you're here with us today. Myself and Aisling will reach out to you after this week, the session, and we can chat to you about the tools, the digital stepping stones, and the Skills to Succeed Academy. They might be very useful supports for your learners to dip their toe in and to understand exactly where the digital competences and their digital confidence lies. So we'll be in touch, and I'm delighted you're here today. Thanks, Gail.
Can I just add, Maria, that just to let people know that before every level 5 course, we do an induction with our learners. And, you know, if somebody has a deficit, we kind of bring it to the attention of Mark, and, you know, we provide support then as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Siobhan. Just to introduce, Siobhan is our further education lead in Cosán.
Hi.
And looks after all of our learners so carefully. Thank you so much, Siobhan. Now I have a question from Connor. Being very mindful of the motivation issue when it comes to older people partaking in digital skills, whilst respecting the right of people to choose not to participate in the online world. How does the panel see us addressing this motivation issue? Very good question from Connor O'Leary in Community Education Kildare Wicklow ETB. In relation to older people who maybe are not able to participate or do not want to participate in the online world. Does anybody want to come to that to address the motivation issue behind that?
I think there was a lot of conversations this week, wasn't there, or last week, if people heard on Live Line, like it is a national issue. It is a challenge, but our whole objective and our ambition is that no one is left behind. And I do think that, you know, using tools like the digital stepping stones, which is really geared towards people with no to low basic digital skills, to understand what skills they currently have and where we can start to go from there to build and develop confidence. That's part of the reasons we developed that tool. So it is making digital that first step into knowing what you can do and where you build from there.
Absolutely. And just to point out that we have U3A group in Cosán that meets every Thursday afternoon, and they have done some digital stepping stones in the past as well. So that's University for the Third Age. We have a great group of people who meet, and they kept going during COVID. I know Imelda was a fantastic advocate for them and supporter of them, and helped them to stay online and stay connected during COVID in the early stages during lockdown when they couldn't meet through WhatsApp groups. And for those who actually did have a motivation issue with it, she would send them text messages to keep them updated with all the things that were going on for those who couldn't join in Zoom. But I know from our TEL course that we have started rolling out in January, we have a couple of organizations, national organizations, that are working at a national level with older active age groups, and they are doing a lot of work in this space as well, and in collaboration with ourselves we hope to do and support more people to get online as well. So I have a question from Middlesex in the University of London. Yes, okay. You're just, you want to be put in touch with the person who asked about AI. No problem, Charles, we'll do that. Excellent. And one more question coming through here. See, once you get started, you just can't stop, guys. The creative juices. So sustainability relies on building network of appropriate yet different supports, collaborative approach, a challenge. Absolutely, Mary. So Mary Stokes is our national guidance expert in Ireland. And the idea of, I think you might be halfway through your sentence there. So maybe we'll come back to that, Mary, at the second set of questions. If you'd like to send it through in full, we'll be able to come to that. Okay. So I think, are we okay, Mark? Anybody, any other questions coming through on your end?
Nothing that I have. Marina, anything on your side?
No, nothing for the time being.
Or Avril, you're okay? Excellent. Okay. So whilst we have your attention, before we go for break for a refresh, Fiona Murdoch, our communications officer, would like to take a group photograph to share on social media and as a memory of this great event. So if you would prefer not to be in the shot, please turn off your camera now and we'll make sure that it's not included on that going out. But if you're happy to be included, please keep your camera on and give us a nice smile. So Fiona, are you ready to go?
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I am. Yeah, biggest smiles, please. Just bear with me because we can't get you all on one screen. So
it'll take 2 or 3.
I'll have to take a few. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, that's it. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. So we're going to take a quick 10-minute break to give yourself a few minutes just to stretch and get yourself a coffee, and do stretch because we know how these 2-hour sessions can be. It's really important for us to mind one another and mind ourselves and our mental well-being as well. Being online for long periods of time is not good for anybody. So take a stretch, quick walk around the kitchen, a cup of coffee, and we'll see you back in 10 minutes. So 10 minutes from now would be 10 past 11. 8 minutes past 11 to be exact, possibly. Thank you. And just to remind everybody, actually, those who've just before you go, to remind you to do some social media if you have a chance on your break with your coffee or after the event. Thanks, Avril, for sharing. So I hope everybody managed to get a coffee and freshen up. I just stepped outside and the blue sky outside is so beautiful, really refreshing. So I think we'll get going because we want to make sure we leave some time for questions at the end. So in our next video, which we're going to show you now, Mark Kelly, who you've met on screen earlier, our digital inclusion coordinator, gives a brief outline of what we mean by digital inclusion, and will also give us an insight into some of the digital tools we have available through Cosán to support digital champions to join our campaign. And these tools will be there for you to help learners on the ground in your communities all across Ireland. So we'll play the video now.
Digital inclusion is basically trying to break down any barriers that any person is experiencing or facing in relation to being digitally included, to be able to avail of all the benefits of being digital. We know 9 out of 10 jobs in the near future will require basic digital skills at the very least. We know that 1 in 2 Irish adults are lacking basic digital skills. We know, thanks to the Adult Literacy for Life strategy, that the objective here is to see 80% of Irish adults with basic digital skills by 2030. Cosán currently has a number of digital tools that we're using. Straight out, we have a really great tool which was developed by our partner Accenture called the Skills to Succeed Academy, and that was developed to support young people's development of their employment skills. It's been recently revamped to include digital skills needed for a digital economy, as well as some soft skills like lifelong learning and growth mindset. Digital Stepping Stones is a new tool that we have developed in conjunction with Accenture and supported by Solus. We identified a need back 4 years ago to understand better where people currently are at in terms of their digital competence and their digital confidence. So based on kind of extensive research and development with Accenture, we created what we call a checker. We don't like calling it an assessment tool, And what it allows us to do within a very short space of time is understand a person's level of their digital competence as well as their level of digital confidence. And we can see, most importantly, where any gaps they may have in their basic digital skills, so we can tailor learning plans directly at the most important gaps first. Digital Stepping Stones is free, it's open source, it's online, and we provide training to our community partners to use that to understand better how their learners and where their learners are on the digital skills spectrum. Based on feedback from our piloting of the Digital Stepping Stones tool, we understood that there was a need and a demand from people to say, what's the next step after assessment? After doing market scans, we could find nothing that really fit the bill in terms of what people need. They need a seamless first step to addressing basic, very basic, no to low digital skills in a way that's accessible for learners. So with thanks to Accenture and Solus, we're developing what we're calling our Let's Get Digital curriculum. So we will have 5 competence areas with 21 micro modules of competence learning, which will take about 10 minutes for learners to complete. And we have really broken down the everything we possibly can in relation to digital to make it as accessible and as inclusive and as useful as possible for people who have either very low digital skills or very low digital confidence.
So thanks to the Digital Inclusion Unit for giving us this update, and those of you who have already signed up to be a digital champion will have met some of the team online in the last week to get a demonstration of the tools that you'll be able to use with the learners in your centres. And hopefully after today, more of you are going to want to sign up and get in touch with us about becoming a digital champion. So we'd now like to introduce you to our next speaker of today, Heydi Maguire. Heydi is Manager Strategy and Consulting business in Accenture Ireland, one of our long-standing partners and supporters. Heydi will speak about Accenture Ireland's digital index, which shines a fresh light post-COVID on some of the digital barriers that exist in Ireland, and Accenture's digital index barometer, which will also track how we are overcoming these barriers in the future. So over to you, Heydi. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Maria, so much, and hello, everyone. It's great to speak to you all today about the digital divide, which is such an important topic for us, but also more specifically about our Digital Divide Report and Index, which was launched to market on the 24th of March. And I'm going to take you all back, if you'll indulge me. I know no one will want to go back there, but briefly back to 2020, July 2020, when we would have launched our very first Digital Divide Report, Bridging the Gap. And what that report shone a light on, it was in really stark terms, was the fact that there very much is a digital divide in Ireland. And there's a gap very much between the haves and the have-nots in regards to people's access of and engagement with digital. And that divide is very sadly seen across age, socioeconomic and working status lines. But interestingly enough, that report that was launched in 2020, the research for that took place in 2019, so pre-pandemic and pre-lockdowns. So we were really keen to see with this new report and index 2 things. One was, how did the pandemic and its lockdowns have impact people in terms of their engagement with digital and their attitudes towards digital? But also we wanted to create a digital index, which would allow us to delve into some of the nuances of the different types of digital skills that are out there, and allow us to track and monitor people's digital competency over time. So it's great to have been able to do that with this report. So what did the research say? So in our report in 2020, what we saw, the headline stat that would have gone out and would have been talked about quite a lot, was the fact that 42% of people, which is nearly half, had below average digital skills. So fast forward to now, and the stat from this report was that this stat had reduced to 32%. So it's an improvement, yes, but that does not tell the full story at all. And what I'm going to talk to you today is around 3 areas of that stat that really, I suppose, paints the picture that that stat does show an improvement, but it's not telling the full story. And that's around the area of everyday digital skills, then more advanced digital skills. And then finally, and probably most importantly, is around our PACE index, which delves into some of the nuances of different types of digital skills. So if I could just ask to go to the next slide there. So everyday digital skills. So the stat of 32% of people having below average digital skills is still a third. It's still quite a significant chunk of people. But we were interested in why there had been an improvement since pre-pandemic to now. And I suppose the reasons for that do make sense when you think about them in terms of everyday digital skills. When so much of the physical world became a no-go zone for us during the pandemic, our devices became how we interacted and engaged with the world. More people did everything online. And you'll see there on the left-hand side some stats. 58% of people made more video calls, 47% of people did more shopping online, and that's for clothes and toys, and I'll explain why in a moment. 56% of people interacted more on social media, and 43% of people watched more content online. And I think everyone anecdotally can think of a friend or a relative who before the pandemic had never used Zoom or Teams and suddenly was joining the family Teams quiz or the family chat, and was able to interact with people when we couldn't see each other in person, which is great to see. And actually 68% of people, which is an incredibly large number, increased their internet usage as a result of the pandemic. All that makes sense. And actually one stat that we thought was quite funny was that 23% of people only increased the amount of food shopping they did online, which I think is probably because people were clinging to the idea of some sort of social contact, even if it was, behind a mask. So that stat was quite a bit lower than some of the other ones that you'll see there, but we did think that was probably the reason for that stat. And interestingly enough, there was a question earlier that someone asked around how do we encourage people in older age cohorts to engage more with digital if they don't really have that will or that want to do so. And I think this really for us actually gives us a really good answer for businesses and for government and for education, is that if the interfaces and if the user experience of these digital tools is easy to use and engaging for people, and there's a clear want to do so, for example, being able to join a call to be able to talk to family and friends, then people will engage. And it's very much carrot and stick, I think. And when I'd also say that for that older age cohort, it's around bringing people together to be able to help digital skills. So maybe bringing people into a room all together so they have that social interaction, but they're also improving their digital skills. So that was probably the good news story in terms of our report around people's day-to-day digital skills improved. But I suppose that leads me now onto the more advanced digital skills, which disappointingly have not improved since our last report at all. And I suppose this has two aspects to it: apathy and motivation, but also the more advanced digital skills in itself in relation to access. So you'll see there on the right-hand side, there's a stat saying that 28% of people have problems with using websites for job searches and updating CVs. And that was very disappointing for us to see. And that means that almost a third of people are being essentially shut out of our workforce. And interestingly, but very sad to see, was something that from a socioeconomic perspective, if you are going to be updating your CV or searching for a job, you can't really do that on your phone. It's very difficult to do that on a phone. And when we looked at people's access or availability of laptops or computers, we saw that if we looked at higher socioeconomic cohorts, 61% of that group were using laptops or computers daily, whereas that dropped down to 39% when we looked at lower socioeconomic cohorts. So that in itself tells a story that people don't have the access to be able to do the things that they need to do to get forward in Ireland's digital economy. So that was quite disappointing. And also what we did see, and that this hadn't changed since our last survey, was that apathy and motivation is still very much a challenge for us. So you'll see there on the right-hand side that 35% of people don't see any areas of their digital skills that need improving. And 24% of people say that nothing would motivate them to improve their digital skills. And I think even Elon Musk doesn't know everything there is to know about digital. And it's not possible to know everything there is to know because it's constantly evolving. There's constantly new things coming down the fore. And I think it's trying to tap into that motivation and access piece. Sure, we accept that there probably is a bit of a fatigue left over from the pandemic, people, trying to get away from technology, people feeling like there's just an overabundance of it. But I think it's trying to have a balanced approach in terms of learning what we need to know to get ahead, but also minding ourselves and doing what we need to do to make sure that we are being mindful of the technology that we're using. So that was sort of the story in terms of our day-to-day digital skills and our more advanced digital skills. But the key difference, again, between our last report and this report is that this time around, we wanted to create a digital index. We wanted to delve into some of the nuances of different types of digital skills. So we created a digital index called PACE. So that stands for Protect, Access, Connect, Educate. And what that did is we took a look at 12 different types of digital behaviors, and we split them across these 4 categories to see were there some areas of digital skills where people are really comfortable and then other areas where people were maybe not so comfortable. And we looked at this from an overall level, but we also delved into it from an age perspective, socioeconomic, and then also a working status perspective. And this led us to some stark but not hugely surprising results, showing again the divide is very prevalent across those age, socioeconomic, and working status lines. So the category that performed worse in our index was the protect category, which is very interesting because, as I've just spoken about, more and more things are moving online. Some services are now not available offline. And if we are to be able to navigate an ever more online world, we need to be able to protect ourselves online. The protect category had behaviors such as being able to install software or applications, being able to change privacy settings on social media sites, being able to protect your phone, tablet, device from viruses, and being able to identify false or unreliable information, so fake news. And that category performed worse on our index, showing that people are not comfortable with some of these really important behaviors. And this category performed worse across all cohorts, but again, those in lower socioeconomic groups, those over 55s, and those not working or working part-time performed worse than those in other groups. So very disappointing to see that. The other category that performed second worst in our index was the category of access. And I have spoken a little bit about access already in terms of people's access to devices, but the access category for our index contained behaviors such as being able to utilize online government services like Revenue Online, being comfortable conducting financial transactions online, and being comfortable using websites to search for jobs or update CVs. So again, very disappointing to see that those two categories in our index performed worse, showing that progress has not been consistent across all areas. The other categories in our index that performed better were connect. So those are behaviors such as being able to chat to family and friends online or being able to use social media. So it's not surprising maybe that those categories performed better. But what we're really interested to see now is going forward, will there be efforts to try and improve this? Because I think specifically when it comes to protect, again, I think anecdotally, everyone can relate to having gotten the scam call or a text or an email in the last number of months, and they've gotten increasingly more sophisticated. And I think in order to be able to equip people with these tools, to be able to encourage people to navigate an online world, we need to be able to protect ourselves and protect our data online. So as you can see from the research, there has been much that can be celebrated, much improved, but also much to take stock of, and that we are not there yet, because people are ultimately being left out of Ireland's digital economy. And this is an access issue, this is an equality issue, and we want to have the most diverse and inclusive workforce that we can possibly have so that we can navigate the future much better. And as Mark mentioned in the video, there are a number of tools that people can use in order to get started, because often the first step is just, the hardest step is just getting started. So as Mark mentioned, the Digital Stepping Stones tool, Skills to Succeed Academy are all great resources to use. But I think ultimately the message for us and from this research and index was that we does not mean one entity. We means business, we means educators, and we means society all coming together to tackle this very, very big issue that we all need to be a part of. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Katie. And as Paul mentioned earlier, we are really lucky to have the support of Accenture in Ireland to do this really important research and provide insights as you've provided today. I think the ability to be able to track our progress using the digital index parameter will be really important as we all move to achieve that goal of getting 80% of adults online by 2030. And it'll allow us to focus on the areas where people need most support, I suppose, and so that we can ensure that nobody is left behind. So thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
In our next learner story, we're going to meet Paula, who will share with us how becoming more digitally competent has allowed her to support her children in her learning.
I really had very poor digital skills when I came in here, when I came into Cosán, and to come in here and then be taught from the ground up of what was present at the time, you know, how computers worked and what was the basic computers, and then to be moved up doing the digital skills by then being able to do word processing, Excel spreadsheets. I mean, it was just fantastic, and it's definitely changed my life, because now I know I'm very comfortable to go into any position, whether it be in a business admin position or whether it be in a community development position, that I can have that business admin and I'd be able to do that administration. So the digital skills really was fantastic to be able to have that and use that in any course of my life, like in anywhere I do. Yes, had such a knock-on effect to all my friends and my children as well, because you know, when they're sitting there and they're doing their homework, I'm not confused about what they're doing. And they also look at me and they're very proud of me. But when we're all sitting down and doing our homework, we're all doing our homework together. So they know when they're doing their homework, they can't say no, they're not going to do their homework, because Mammy's doing her homework as well. So we're all like in this great learning environment at home. And I think that gives them great incentive to continue on, not just, you know, not just finish where school finishes for them, but just to continue on and, in lifelong learning.
I love that, where we see so many examples of families learning together, husbands and wives, mothers and daughters and sons. Really fantastic. So I would really now like to welcome our next speaker today. Jemma Lee is Senior Support Development Officer with Adult Education Erasmus Plus projects for Léargas. Jemma is going to give us a presentation on Léargas, including the work that they do with IPALE Ireland. Léargas manages national and international programs in youth work, education and training in Ireland. And I know she's going to share some opportunities that some of you might be able to avail of. Welcome, Jemma.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Oh gosh, so many interesting insights so far today. And I always kind of worry about being one of the later people and coming after all of that. But hopefully what I'm going to do today is kind of give you some things that you can take action now. So if you're sitting there and you're feeling inspired and you're thinking, okay, actually, I really want to do some work on this in my organization with my learners, well, hopefully here's some insights into how you can do that. So who we are, Léargas is the name of our organization. We're the kind of national agency that run a number of different European programs based in Ireland. So you'll have heard of the Erasmus Plus program. Hopefully some people will have, that's one of the kind of the projects that we manage, and that's my role, that I look after all the Adult Ed Erasmus Plus projects. And then IPALE is a kind of an online platform that I'll talk a bit more about as well. So we can move on there. Yeah, so we manage these broad programs, and we can keep skipping on. So Erasmus Plus, let me give you a very quick overview. So it's the EU program. It looks at education, training, youth and sport. It has been going for a few years, but it was relaunched last year as a slightly new program for 2021. And if we move on, then you'll see the sectors that are covered on the next slide. So people sometimes hear of Erasmus and they think of the higher education, the university students going off to do a year abroad. So that is actually covered by the Higher Education Authority. It's separate to us in Léargas. So we look at the adult ed, we look at vocational training, we look at schools, and we look at youth. So I know for some of the organizations here, you might work across some of those fields. At a European level, they make a really big separation between adult ed and vocational education, whereas in Ireland, we tend to kind of cluster those together a little bit into this kind of idea of further education. But if you're not sure where you fit, chat to us and we'll help you explain that, where that goes. So that's the sectors we move in. As I said, I'm mostly the adult ed person, so hopefully that's what's most relevant to you all here today. And if we go on, then you'll see that the priorities for the program, I think, really fit in with the community education sector. You know, digital transformation is actually up there as one of the priorities for the next 6 years, but we've also got pieces of things like inclusion and diversity. There's a piece about climate change, and that really important one about participation in democratic life. And I think, you know, we've heard that from some of the learner stories already today, that actually getting that education and sort of, it helps you to get out there, get into society, get engaged a little bit more. So I think it's really important to see. So hopefully some of those priorities are linking with you, as this might be something that you might be working on. You might be interested in developing a project on that. So, you know, let's move on and let's go down to what are the actual projects that you can do. So with the Erasmus Plus program, we have deadlines a couple of times a year. We give out large grants for these projects to help you to develop your own organization. So when you talk about one of the aspects of it is this key action. So this is a bit jargony, but you know, we provide lots of training, we provide lots of workshops where we help you get through that jargony bit. So with the key action 1, you can do things like you can send your staff off on a training course somewhere in Europe to learn from another organization to see how they're doing things. You can also go on job shadow and actually stay in that organization for a few days or a few weeks and see how things work, how they do it. You could maybe invite an expert back. So if you met some incredible person at a training course from Germany that's doing fabulous work, you invite them back into your organization to run a workshop for your staff to help you learn. There's also what's really important there is the piece about learner mobilities. So you can actually take a group of adult learners off to another European country to visit another organization. And the learning that comes with that is really kind of transformational, of just being abroad, meeting other adult learners from a very different society and culture, and learning from each other. And of course, as part of all of that, then we also have the inclusion support. So if you've got learners who, for whatever reason, need some extra support, maybe they need an accompanying person, maybe they have a mobility issue, maybe they need help with visas and passports, if they're a migrant background, you know, there's all kinds of different factors that might be there, but there's inclusion support for that. And there's even preparatory visits that your staff can go over first and check everything out, so they know before they turn up with 20 learners, they know what they're walking into. So that's the key action 1. That is a very broad overview, but hopefully that just gives you some insight into the kind of projects that you could do if you're sitting there and you're feeling quite inspired by all of this. So let's move on then to the key action 2 slide. So these are a lot broader. These are kind of what these are called as partnership projects. So you partner up with another organization, another European country to develop something. So if you're sitting there with a great idea about a digital inclusion project that you want to run, you find a European partner, you team up with them, maybe you want to develop a training course or a toolkit or an online platform or whatever it is, and you can work together. There's funding there, that funding comes in lump sums, so you can really play with it to do what you need to do. Maybe you need to pilot something, maybe you want to run a training event for other Irish practitioners or other international practitioners. There's a lot of flexibility within that. So that's the key action 2 projects. And I think I have on the next slide a little bit more info just in terms of what kind of funding is involved and that sort of thing. If we click on, yeah, so there are lump sum fundings from 30,000 right up to 400,000. So dream as big as you want to dream if anyone's sitting there with an idea in their head. So there is a workshop coming up, and I think one of the ladies is going to put it into the chat for you there. I have a newcomer to Erasmus Plus workshop coming up. So if you want to come along to that, if you have, you know, still not really sure what I'm talking about, that's for you. It's a newcomer session. We'll talk you through it all. The deadlines are not until next October to apply, so you've got loads of time to prepare that. And then the next slide then, so if you're sitting there going, okay, this is great, Jemma, but how am I going to find all these European partners? Well, we have that sorted as well. So EPALE is the electronic platform for adult learning in Europe. It's not just about partner searches, it's about so much more. I put a few buzzwords on the slide there, but really anything you can imagine you can find there in terms of adult learning. There's, you know, blogs from people who've done really interesting projects, there's research reports, there's access to online courses. I had a quick look just when that question came into the chat about the artificial intelligence. I said, okay, let's just see. So I typed it in. Within 2 minutes, I was then watching a YouTube tutorial as to how to embed artificial intelligence into your adult education practice. It's there, it's all already there. Someone in Poland has done it before and you can learn from them. So that's what EPALE is all about. That was without even logging in, I think. So I think we'll stick the link in the chat. So that's something you could do today, right now, if you wanted to. Log into EPALE, set up an account, and you can start benefiting from all of that from all across Europe and what people are doing. My colleague Monique Nia is here on the chat today as well, and she works specifically on EPALE. So if you're finding it hard to navigate, if you have any questions, she is there. She's happy to give you a hand. So that's EPALE. So let's click on again. That's just what it looks like, just to give you a sense of what it looks like when you go onto the website. And you'll see at the bottom there, there's different themes each year. So this year for 2022, there's a particular focus on different themes. One of them is young adults, and that's because this is the European Year of Youth. There's also pieces about skills, learning communities, and that creativity piece. So loads of really interesting stuff. But as I said, it's kind of user generated. So different people put in what they're working on. So let's click on again. And this is just the last piece I want to highlight to you. So this is an increasing digital reach initiative that we have going at the moment. That's the APALE team are running this. And basically, if you are sitting there and you're thinking, okay, this is all fab, but we don't even have the devices to get started, well, here we go. So these are small grants. The deadline is coming up very soon. It's the 1st of May. So today's workshop was at the right time that we were able to mention this to you all. So there's from €500 up to 2,500 for different types of equipment. So if you need laptops, if you need tablets, if you need projectors, whatever those different things are, again, we'll stick the link into the chat and you can see exactly the breakdown of what it's there and what's available. So there'll be small grants available, and it's for any sort of adult ed or community organization, anyone that's working in that broader space of adult ed and community ed, you should be eligible for that. So certainly that's one to act on immediately, because that deadline is the 1st of May. APALE, you can also do today if you want. And then the Erasmus Plus grants are not coming up until October. So you have some time to think about that. But if we click on to the next slide, then I think we have my contact details there. And also the contact details from my colleagues on the APALE team, Monica, Nia and Lucia. So, we are totally open to hearing from you. Drop us an email, send us a tweet, whatever way it works for you to connect, give us a call. We're here, and that's what we're about. It's to encourage people to engage with these programs, and anything that we can do to help you cross this digital divide, that's really a big priority for us at the moment. So listen, thanks so much for having us here today. It's been really interesting to hear from all the speakers and all the learners themselves as well in terms of their experience of it.
Super. Thank you so much, Jemma. That was really interesting to get that update on all the opportunities that our community partners and digital champions may be able to avail of. So as Jemma said, dream big with your ideas and get your applications in for those grants that are coming up this week. We're really grateful to Léargas and the team in APALE Ireland who are supporting this Digital Inclusion Week. So thank you for being with us today. So we're going to go on to our next video, and you're going to now hear about Cosán's digital champions and how community partners like the Matt Talbot Community Trust are participating in this initiative to support their local communities and adult learners to use the service and to get online.
The digital champions have come on board as a result of technology enhanced learning course. They wanted to help bridge the gap, the digital divide gap. They want to learn more about how to support citizens and people coming in to use their services. They want to be able to reach out to them virtually. So they want to learn more about virtual tools and about digital tools. And so they need to be patient. They don't have to have excellent digital skills. That's what we're here for. We provide the support around that. So they just need to have a growth mindset, a willingness to learn, and a willingness to help those in their community have basic digital skills, and we will help them do the rest and provide the support around that.
But digital literacy is just so important in this day and age. We're living in a digital world. For everyday living, we bank online, we're using apps all of the time. We can't contact our doctor on the phone the way we used to. We have to use online portals. We use it to Google a recipe. We use our Google Apps to get from A to B. We use it in all areas of life, but there are so many people out there who have no exposure, no access to digital. That's why we've decided to come on board. We want to use the resources and the tools and the hints and the tips from working with other digital champions to, one, to make our program more engaging, and two, to make it more relevant so that we can bring the participants, the people that we work with, close that digital gap, really, close that digital divide.
So our final learner story is from Pamela. And Pamela is going to share her personal experience of the important role technology played in helping her to stay connected especially during the recent period of lockdowns in COVID.
Zoom is a big thing. Never heard of it in my life, like until obviously COVID happened, you know, that kind of way. And everything was done through Zoom. Like, you know, even setting up Zoom was a task, you know what I mean? And I had to be shown how to do it. But now it's just go into an email, click on the link, click on open Zoom or whatever, and you're in, do you know what I mean? It's like, it's second nature now. I think Zoom is coming like a second nature to me in any way, and I think probably to a lot of other people, I think it's a lifesaver, do you know what I mean, to be honest with you. And then the chance that it's online learning, do you know what I mean? Like you don't have to go somewhere, because we were all locked down, we had the opportunity to learn, do you know, that kind of way. Like, and it was great for women across Ireland, do you know what I mean? All come together, do you know what I mean? And it was like a little union, do you know, that kind of way. And just the course itself, like, is what I want to do. Like, every part of something in it I wanted to learn, do you know what I mean? I found it so interesting. But then outside college, I have my family, which we did Zoom all the time. Like, my sister lives in England, sister lives down the country, brothers and all that around the place. And every Friday, we'd sit down and do Zoom and a pub quiz, do you know, that kind of way. And it was great, like, you know what I mean, to see them, like, to experience using Zoom. And it's like, it's just mad, like, how digital things have come on. Like, really, like, come on, like, and like my skills, I feel confident about doing Zoom now. The WhatsApp, I never heard of WhatsApp really, do you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, WhatsApp. I'm not really up to the times. But we set one up in the group, do you know what I mean? And it's great, and we get help, and like, you know, it's literally connecting with people. It's like they're there, and you're connecting with them, do you know what I mean? That kind of thing, like, I think that helped me a lot, like, you know, especially with emails and downloading things. I was always afraid of, oh my God, am I downloading something that's going to break the computer? I always thought I was going to break the computer if I press on something, do you know what I mean? But now I know how to just do the basics, you know, open an email, write an email, send an email, download documents, save documents, all the basic stuff, Word, Excel. Excel is hard, but I like it, and I'd like to get more into it, you know, that kind of way. But I find each, you learn a skill, but you have to practice it to keep it going, do you know, that kind of way. So, but I must say, Zoom is the business. I love it, I really do. I think it's great.
So I love that Zoom is second nature now. So true, Paula. What would we all have done without Zoom and WhatsApp over the last 2 years to stay connected to our family and friends and college and work? I think we all did some of those Friday night quizzes. I know we certainly did. We had an 80-year-old cousin singing a song for his 80th birthday during COVID lockdowns on Friday nights. So it really, really did save a lot of people's isolation. So we're now going to go back and do a second short Q&A session and bring some questions to the panel. Mark, do you have any questions for the panel that have come in the last while?
Nothing has come in to me. If anyone wants to send to me in the chat, Mark Kelly in the drop down. Mary Stokes did have something around how to build collaborative supports. We need to lead through policy development directly informed by practice. This can be a challenge as reliance on funding means that many excellent services are pitted against each other. Kind of theme like get yourself online, or just ensuring that everyone has online access break down some of these challenges. Well, Mary, I think we would absolutely hope that a campaign like Get Yourself Online to mobilize the grassroots, to normalize the digital divide and people lacking digital skills, to shine a light on that and to make that not something to be hidden or to be ashamed of, but to try to develop and support people with the skills, and being able to reach out to organizations such as yourself and us and ask questions and get information and get support and go and find out where they can go to address it. But I do think that we are seeing policy development is absolutely going in this direction now, as the Minister spoke about the Adult Literacy for Life strategy and where the direction we're all going in a European sense, with the ambition for 80% with basic digital skills by 2030. So the dial is moving in the right direction. And I think with the likes of the research and insights developed by the likes of Accenture and things like that, you can see that public, corporate and community working together really will make a big difference to this. So collaboration, I do think, is key, and I think Minister Harris said that as very much as well.
Absolutely, collaboration and partnership. We can only go forward together, I think.
I have a question from Ken. How are you dealing with basic literacy issues and digital skills, especially with the older generation? I think Katie, if Katie is there, did you want to say anything in relation to the insights in the older generation? I know you touched on it, but any kind of tips that you might be able to share?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, this came up actually when we launched the report on the 24th of March. We had a panel discussion, and Barry Lowry, who's the government CIO, had some points on this that were quite insightful. And his point was that the government strategy is around trying to bring older people together in order to learn these digital skills. So whether that's in like a community hall or in a post office, trying to bring groups of people together to help them learn the digital skills, because it can be a little bit overwhelming if you're trying to learn these things on your own and you don't really know where to start. And we've heard people saying like they feared, if they clicked on something that something would happen. And I think it's around bringing these groups of people together to help them learn, with other people. And also I think the point that we saw in our research around, if the user face and the user experience of digital tools is easy to use and easy to navigate, people will be more inclined to use it. And I think Zoom is a good example of that. I think, a lot of people's first time using Zoom was during the pandemic. I think that's probably a lesson to the product owners themselves around, if you want people to use your tools and interact with them, they need to be easy to follow. They need to be easy to engage with. So I think it's probably one, it's around bringing groups of older people together to help them learn with each other. So that's a social element as well as just a learning element. And then second, I think it's probably for the providers themselves. It's around trying to provide tools and experiences that are really easy to use and navigate, that aren't complicated and aren't difficult to engage with.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Katie.
No
problem. There's a question from David Cunningham. Have you or your partners experienced much of a drop-off in online engagement by participants, target audience, now that it's possible to be back in face-to-face workshops and interactions? In Foróige, that has been the situation in some cases. Don't know if I'm best placed to answer that. I don't think we have seen, but I do think we are, words like apathy have come up, motivation being a key issue. But I do think again, campaigns like this, to get the message out there, that it is possible and it is important to get yourself online and to be able to do that. We live in a digitalized society, so I think it's up to all of us. And I think Heydi mentioned it in her speech about a connected system of digital champions is needed in order to be able to tackle such a huge challenge and problem like this. It's not going to happen overnight. Obviously, 2030 is the target to address this by. But I think it's up to all of us to try to re-engage and to make it as easy as possible for people to take that first step.
Brilliant. So any other questions from anybody? We all good? And of course, if anybody thinks of questions afterwards, or you'd like to share anything or get some more information, you'll be able to get in touch with all members of the team, and we'll be delighted to help you during the week. There's lots of other things going to happen during the week, so we'll be here waiting for your questions. Okay, so I think we'll move on to the next section. And I just want to ask Avril, would you mind putting the spotlight on Emer McNally, our graphic harvester, who's been busy capturing the live visuals over the last 2 hours. Emer, as I said earlier, communicates the key points in a creative way that tell the story of our event. So we really look forward to sharing these with you after the event. So you can see here, she's talking about the index, the barometer, apathy and the lack of motivation. That was very quick, Emer. You got that in just in the last few seconds. And the opportunity to dream big with the opportunities from Ipale, breaking down the barriers, bridging the gaps. Excellent. Fantastic. Cosán's courses are inclusive, responsive to learners' needs. Assistive technology unlocks access. Hardware together with skills will help people to move forward. Many people are quietly excluded, which is a very, very important point. On the margins or in the shadows, I know it's been mentioned before. It's like the literacy gap of years ago. Fantastic. The primary factor is poverty, equity, plus sustainability. You still need access and supports, 5,000 devices, never switched on, leave nobody behind. Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you so much, Emer, and we look forward to seeing the finished product when you're completely finished. So before we wrap up today, I have a few short announcements and an invitation, I suppose a call to action, you might say, for our community partners. So in addition to today's event, Cosán are going to host a number of digital drop-in sessions for community partners in Cosán. And these are going to take place in person in our centre in Jobstown in Tala. They'll take place on Thursday, the 28th this week, and Friday, the 29th of April from 1 o'clock to 4. So we've scheduled sessions on hourly basis from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to 4. We would ask that you would book in advance because we're capping the numbers coming into the building at 15 per person, just for the safety of all our visitors and our staff and our learners. So please do book in advance and get in touch with us. To register, just email courses@uncosán.ie or give us a call. Our contact details will be in the chat for you. And I will ask somebody to put that piece into the chat so you have the dates. It should have gone out to you by email as well, but we will maybe drop an email reminder to you afterwards. So moving on to the next slide, we also have a really important call to action today. We already have almost 20 digital champions signed up around the country in the last 2 weeks. And we're hoping that more of you will join up and become a digital champion in your community today. You could host an event, invite people in, adult learners into your centre for a cup of coffee, young and old, and support them to get online using the digital tools that you've heard about today. We will provide you with all the information you need, free training and resources. We've already done some of those training sessions and demonstrations of the tools during the week. So please sign up and register today. You'll get more information on our website, uncosán.ie, get yourself online, or you can contact me or a member of our team directly. On the contact details will be in the chat. So finally, and we're going to finish up a little bit before time, so you get the gift of a few minutes to get out and get some of that fresh air after today's event. So I'd like to thank a number of people who made this event possible and this week possible. So firstly, and most importantly, to the Minister, Simon Harris, for supporting this initiative at the top of the event with his opening address, and for taking the time to pre-record this video. We are most grateful for this support. To all of our speakers, to Heydi, to Paul, Katie and Jemma, thank you for your time today and for your insights and experience. To our partners, Solus, Accenture Ireland and Ipale Ireland, for their continued support and help in making this event possible and making Ireland's first Community Digital Inclusion Week possible. A very special thank you to our learners who are always at the centre of everything we do. To Samantha, to Tanya, Paula and Pamela, and our community partner Karen from Matt Talbot Community Trust for their invaluable insights and perspectives, ensuring that we never forget the most important people who are always at the centre of our work. To all the team in Cosán for their continued passion and commitment who made this week possible, and to those across the organisation who work every day in every area of our service to enable us to do the work that we do. To Emer McNally, our graphic harvester, for recording our event and with your inspiring visuals. And finally, and most importantly, to you, our community partners, our corporate partners, our government partners and members of the wider society for joining us here today. We know we have to do this together. The solution to the digital divide challenge requires a whole of society approach, as has been mentioned so many times today. And we must ensure that we leave no one behind and support those furthest behind first. Today is just the beginning of our work. We look forward to working collaboratively with all of you as we continue this important work that has started here today. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.